So as you're going through today, if you see anything that's an equation and it has a fraction in it, we learned in Algebra 1 about something called clearing the fraction, okay? And some of you chose to do it and some of you chose not to do it because they were just numbers. But when they involve things with x's in them, it makes your life a lot easier if you get rid of the fractions. So it's still going to involve finding the common denominator. Not finding, find the common denominator. But what we're going to do with that common denominator is we are going to multiply both sides by the common denominator. So at that point, what you're going to have is you're going to have an equation that no longer involves a fraction. So even though this part I think is the part that's going to be the newest for us, then once we get to step 3 where we solve, that is not going to be anything new. You're going to either have a linear equation with just an x in it. Sometimes you might see an x squared, which we could solve with factoring or quadratic formula. But the solving part is going to be something you've done before. One thing we have to be careful of on some of these is what happens because we clear the fraction is sometimes we get an answer that would have made the original fraction have a 0 on the bottom. And so we are always going to check for extraneous solutions. And that probably is a new word for you. Maybe, I don't know. And all that word extraneous means is, I'll just draw a little arrow here. Is they don't work in the original equation. Okay. So my thought was today to do just a couple examples, and if we need more than 2 we can do that. So the first example I'm going to show you, it's not really going to be too hard to find the common denominator because there's only one denominator. So we're going to solve, and I would like you to leave a little space next to your sides so you have room to multiply. We're going to solve 1 over x plus 4 equals 2. Okay, so as I mentioned before, there's only one denominator. If there's only one denominator, that is the common denominator. What is it? X plus 4. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to multiply both sides of the equation by the common denominator. So I'm going to multiply this side by x plus 4. If equation solving, if I do to one side, I also have to multiply the other side by x plus 4. Notice I'm putting it in a parentheses there. Okay. All right. Let's not forget fraction stuff. If we have x plus 4, I multiplied, that really means x plus 4 over 1, right? So what can I do with this x plus 4 in the numerator and this x plus 4 in the denominator? They cancel. That's why we multiplied by that common denominator, because we wanted to get it to cancel the fraction out. What's now left on that side?
1.
Just a 1. On the other side, I have 2 times x plus 4. Would you solve that equation for me? Excuse me. So I got negative 7/2, or what's another way of writing that if you prefer? Negative 3.5 if you'd rather. I am going to double check. If I went back to my original equation, if I put negative 3.5 in the denominator and added it to 4, does that make the denominator 0? No, it does not. That's what I mean by check that it works in the original. It does. And if you plugged that in, you would get 1 over 0.5, which is the same as 2, which is what we have on our other side. Okay, so let's do something that has a fraction on both sides for our second example. Okay, so for this one, I'm going to have 5x over x minus 2 equals 7 plus 10 over x minus 2. Okay, on this one, I do have 2 fractions, but do you see how they both have the same denominator? The denominator is x minus 2. So that is my common denominator, and that's what I'm going to multiply by. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to multiply this side by x minus 2, that side of the equation. Now be really careful, because how many things do you see on the right side of our equation? 2 things, right? Remember in our instructions we have to multiply the whole side, so make sure you put a parentheses around that whole thing. And we're going to multiply by x minus 2. Okay. So let's start on the left side. What happens if I have x minus 2 on top and x minus 2 on the denominator? What can I do there? Go ahead and cancel them. This time what I have left is a 5x. Okay. On the right side, I am going to have to distribute. There is nothing to cancel when I multiply over here. So I am going to write out 7 times x minus 2. If I were multiplying x minus 2 times the second part of that side, there is something to cancel. Those x minus 2's cancel. See that? What's left then? Just the plus 10. Okay, would you go ahead and solve that equation? So I have x's on two different sides. I'm going to move this 7x to the other side. So subtract 7x from both sides. That gives me negative 2x equals, and negative 14 plus 10 is negative 4. We divide both sides by negative 2. X equals 2. Okay. So, the last thing we need to do is we need to check for extraneous solutions. In the original equation, what would happen if you put 2 in for x? Specifically look at the denominators. What would happen if you put 2 in for x? It would make it 0, and we can't divide by 0. This is the example of what I was talking about. This is extraneous. That just means that there is no solution to that. Yes? I just added negative 14 plus 10 together. I added my like terms in there. Okay.